when explanation becomes self-defense. Consider this carefully before anything else. Most people believe they explain themselves to be understood. That is rarely the real reason. Explanation is usually an attempt to secure approval, soften judgment, or escape discomfort. It appears reasonable, even polite. But beneath it sits a quiet dependence on how others see you. Events themselves carry no demand for explanation. A choice is made. An action occurs. What follows is interpretation. Disturbance begins not because someone questions you, but because you feel compelled to justify what is already done. This compulsion is not imposed from outside. It arises from your own judgment that your standing depends on agreement. Stoic discipline begins with a refusal to confuse these domains. What others think is not yours to manage. What you decide, assent to, and stand behind is. When you rush to explain, you reveal that your sense of authority has shifted outward. You have treated opinion as something that can diminish you. There is no comfort offered here. Circumstances are not blamed. Social pressure is not treated as an excuse. Responsibility remains exactly where it belongs, with your judgments. If you believe silence threatens you, you will speak defensively. If you believe misunderstanding harms you, you will over-clarify. In each case, the weakness is not external. It is the belief that justification is required for legitimacy. This is not a call to be rude or dismissive. It is a demand for precision. Explanation given freely is different from explanation given under pressure. One is chosen. The other is surrendered. Hold this distinction, the first boundary you keep violating. Before discussing discipline, ownership must be precise. You explain because you believe something outside you has authority over what is inside you. That belief is the error. The first boundary you violate is between what belongs to your judgment and what belongs to the opinions of others. Your judgments, intentions, and choices are yours. They arise from your reason. They remain under your command. Whether they are approved, misunderstood, or criticized does not alter their ownership. The reaction of another person is not an extension of your will. It is a separate event, governed by causes you do not control. When this boundary is ignored, explanation becomes compulsive. You speak not to clarify facts, but to repair your standing. You rehearse reasons to prevent disapproval. You add context to avoid misinterpretation. None of this changes what you chose. It only reveals that you are treating reputation as if it were yours to manage. Consider a simple example. You decline an invitation. The decision is complete. Yet when asked, you add layers of justification. You cite fatigue, timing, prior commitments. You do not do this because the facts require it. You do it because silence feels dangerous. You imagine judgment filling the gap. That imagined judgment is not imposed. It is produced by your own assent. Or consider criticism at work. A comment is made about your approach. Before examining whether the critique is accurate, you rush to explain constraints, intentions, and effort. Again, the facts are secondary. What matters is the discomfort of being seen unfavorably. You try to regain control by managing perception. But perception was never yours. Stoic discipline insists on a strict accounting. What belongs to you is the decision to act according to reason. What does not belong to you is how that action is received. When you blur this line, you place your stability in something fragile. You make your peace dependent on agreement. This is why explanation feels urgent. You are attempting to control what cannot be controlled. You are spending effort where no authority exists. The result is not understanding, but exhaustion. Each explanation invites another judgment. Each clarification opens another gap. There is no end because the task itself is impossible. Silence, in contrast, is not withdrawal. It is recognition. It acknowledges that your responsibility ended with your choice. If explanation is requested for practical reasons, you can give it calmly. If it is demanded for emotional reassurance, you can decline without hostility. The difference lies in motive. One is chosen. The other is compelled. Notice also how often explanation is offered before it is asked for. This is the clearest signal of boundary confusion. You anticipate judgment and attempt to preempt it. In doing so, you train yourself to seek permission for your own decisions. Over time, this weakens resolve. You begin to act with an internal audience in mind. The Stoic response is not defiance. It is clarity. You allow others to think as they will. You do not correct every misunderstanding. You do not rescue every perception. You return attention to what is yours, the quality of your judgment and the steadiness of your assent. When this boundary is held, explanation loses its urgency. You speak when it serves reason, not when it serves anxiety. You accept that being misunderstood is not an injury. It is an external condition, no different from weather or delay. This explains where effort is misplaced, but not yet how disturbance takes hold, the moment you agree without noticing. Now we look at what actually creates disturbance. Nothing that happens to you carries meaning on its own. A comment is made. A delay occurs. A message goes unanswered. These are impressions. They arrive without asking permission. You do not choose them. You are not responsible for their appearance. What follows is the critical point. The mind evaluates the impression and decides what it means. This decision is assent. It is the moment where you either agree with the impression or suspend judgment. Disturbance does not come from the impression. It comes from the agreement you give it. When someone questions your decision and you feel the urge to explain, the impression is simple: I am being judged. That impression is automatic. What is not automatic is the conclusion that judgment is dangerous, that it diminishes you, or that it must be corrected. The moment you accept that conclusion, explanation feels necessary. Anxiety appears. Speech accelerates. The same mechanism operates in silence. A lack of response is interpreted as disapproval. A raised eyebrow becomes rejection. None of these meanings are contained in the event itself. They are supplied by you. The disturbance you experience is the direct result of the meaning you consented to. This is why explanation often feels urgent and rational at the same time. The judgment has already been made, but it is not yet visible. You have agreed, without noticing, that misunderstanding is a threat. From that agreement, defensive behavior follows naturally. You are no longer choosing how to respond. You are reacting to a verdict you quietly endorsed. Consider a common situation. You set a boundary. Someone responds with confusion or mild resistance. Immediately, thoughts appear. They think I am unreasonable. They will assume bad intentions. These thoughts are impressions. They are not commands. Yet you treat them as facts. You assent. The body tightens. You begin to explain, clarify, justify. The behavior is secondary. The agreement came first. Or consider criticism. The words themselves are neutral sounds. The disturbance arises when you accept the judgment: this threatens my standing. Once that belief is in place, explanation becomes a form of self-defense. You are not seeking truth. You are seeking relief from a belief you have already adopted. Stoic discipline places freedom exactly here. Between impression and assent, there is a pause. It may be brief. It may be uncomfortable. But it exists. In that pause, you can examine the impression without endorsing it. You can say, "This is how it appears, but I do not yet know what it means." That single refusal to agree is enough to prevent disturbance. This does not mean suppressing feeling. Sensations may arise. Discomfort may appear. The Stoic claim is not that you control these. It is that you control whether they become judgments. Feeling pressure is not the same as agreeing that pressure must be relieved through explanation. Most people skip this distinction. They believe clarity requires speed. They mistake immediacy for honesty. In reality, speed usually indicates unexamined assent. The faster you feel compelled to explain, the more likely it is that you have already agreed to a harmful judgment. Training begins by noticing this sequence. Impression arrives. Judgment suggests itself. Assent follows, or does not. The point of discipline is not to eliminate impressions, but to delay agreement. One breath is enough. One moment of examination restores choice. When you practice this, explanation loses its compulsive quality. You may still choose to speak. You may still offer context. But it will no longer be driven by the need to correct a perceived threat. It will be guided by reason, not urgency. Understanding the mechanism is not enough. It must be trained. What discipline actually trains? This is where most people misunderstand discipline. They assume discipline means forcing behavior, suppressing discomfort, or enduring pressure without complaint. Under that model, the habit of explaining appears harmless, even virtuous. You explain because you are being responsible, being clear, or being mature. In reality, this form of discipline trains the wrong faculty. It strengthens reactivity, not reason. Stoic discipline is not concerned with controlling outcomes or appearances. It is concerned with training judgment. Specifically, it trains your capacity to notice impressions without immediately assenting to them. Nothing else is being exercised. When you habitually explain yourself, you are practicing speed, not clarity. You are reinforcing the reflex to answer before examining. Over time, this conditions the mind to treat every impression as a demand. The question, the look, the pause from another person becomes something that must be addressed. Discipline, properly understood, interrupts this reflex. Training does not occur in moments of intensity. It occurs before pressure arrives. You do not learn steadiness while already defending yourself. You learn it by repeatedly noticing the urge to explain and choosing not to obey it. This is not suppression. It is selection. The Stoics were precise on this point. Discipline does not remove impressions. It does not prevent discomfort. It teaches you where to place attention. When the urge to justify appears, attention usually rushes outward. You begin scanning for how you are perceived, what is assumed, what might be misunderstood. Discipline redirects attention inward, toward the judgment forming beneath the urge. Ask a simple question in that moment: what am I agreeing to right now? Often the answer is revealing. You may be agreeing that misunderstanding is intolerable. You may be agreeing that silence implies guilt. You may be agreeing that your value depends on being seen correctly. None of these agreements are required. They are habits. Discipline is the repetition of refusing unnecessary agreements. Each refusal is small. Each one is quiet. No one else may notice. But internally, something significant changes. You stop treating impressions as commands. You stop confusing discomfort with danger. This training is not about becoming unresponsive. It is about becoming deliberate. There will be times when explanation is appropriate. There will be contexts where clarity serves a shared goal. Discipline does not eliminate speech. It removes compulsion from speech. Notice the difference. When explanation is chosen, it is brief, factual, and proportionate. It does not carry emotional residue. When explanation is compelled, it expands. It accumulates detail. It carries urgency. The tone is not calm because the judgment underneath is not calm. Discipline addresses this at the root. It does not argue with the urge. It does not moralize it. It simply creates space. In that space, you allow the impression to exist without acting on it. This is why Stoic training emphasizes repetition over intensity. You are not building strength. You are building familiarity with the pause. Most people avoid this pause because it feels exposed. Silence feels like surrender. But this is another unexamined judgment. Silence is not submission. It is ownership. It signals that your authority does not depend on immediate defense. Over time, this practice alters your internal posture. You no longer brace for evaluation. You no longer preemptively justify. You wait. You observe. You respond only when reason, not anxiety, gives the signal. This is discipline as training, not force. It does not harden you. It clarifies you. It makes your actions fewer, cleaner, and more intentional. And because your judgments are steadier, your words carry more weight when you do speak. Training remains abstract unless it appears in daily life, where practice replaces explanation. This practice is proven in ordinary moments. The habit of explaining does not disappear through insight alone. It dissolves when daily situations are used as training. Not dramatic confrontations. Not high-stakes conflicts. Small moments where the urge appears and nothing forces you to obey it. Begin with anticipation, not anxiety. Each day will present minor friction. Delays, questions, silence, mild disapproval. Expect these accurately. Do not rehearse defenses. Do not prepare explanations in advance. Simply acknowledge that impressions will arrive. This expectation removes surprise, which is often what accelerates assent. When the impression appears, practice the pause. One breath is enough. You do not need a technique. You do not need a phrase. You only need to delay agreement. Let the urge to explain be felt fully without acting on it. Notice how quickly the mind supplies reasons, stories, and justifications. None of them require acceptance. In that pause, return to the boundary. Ask, is explanation required for action, or is it being offered to relieve discomfort? This question is not accusatory. It is diagnostic. If explanation serves a clear practical function, you can give it plainly. If it serves only to repair an imagined injury, you let it pass. A common daily exercise is restraint in conversation. Not silence as avoidance, but silence as selection. When asked a question, answer what is asked. Do not add context unless it is necessary. Do not volunteer defenses. Allow gaps. Allow others to hold their own interpretations. This feels unnatural at first because it removes a familiar form of control. But that control was never real. Another practice is reviewing the day without praise or guilt. In the evening, recall moments where you explained unnecessarily. Do not criticize yourself. Criticism is just another judgment seeking relief. Simply note the sequence. Impression. Assent. Reaction. Then recall moments where you paused and did not explain. Again, no pride. Pride ties identity to performance, which recreates dependency. Observation alone is sufficient. This review trains accuracy. You begin to see patterns. Certain people, topics, or contexts trigger explanation more reliably. This is useful information. It shows where you still believe approval grants safety. The goal is not to eliminate these triggers, but to meet them with familiarity. Over time, explanation loses its urgency. You may still speak, but the tone changes. Fewer words. Less speed. No excess detail. Your speech aligns with necessity rather than impulse. Others may notice the change. They may interpret it in various ways. That is not part of the practice. What matters is internal consistency. You are no longer negotiating your authority moment by moment. You act, you observe, you respond when appropriate. The need to manage perception fades because you are no longer outsourcing stability. This practice does not make life smoother. Misunderstandings still occur. Disapproval still appears. What changes is your relationship to these events. They no longer demand explanation to be tolerable. They become neutral conditions, like noise or weather. When daily practice replaces explanation, something subtle happens. You stop performing your decisions. You start inhabiting them. The distance between choice and defense closes. Action stands on its own. From practice, a different kind of freedom begins to appear, What remains when approval is removed? Now we can speak precisely about freedom. When the need for approval is removed, very little changes on the surface. People still react. Opinions still circulate. Misunderstandings still arise. What changes is where authority is located. It returns inward, where it was always meant to remain. Most people associate freedom with comfort. They imagine ease, agreement, and smooth interaction. Under that definition, freedom is fragile. It depends on favorable conditions and cooperative audiences. The habit of explaining grows naturally from this misunderstanding. If comfort is freedom, then anything that threatens comfort must be neutralized. Explanation becomes a tool for preserving ease. Stoic freedom is different. It is not the absence of friction. It is the absence of dependency. You are free not because others approve, but because your judgments no longer require their approval to stand. This does not make life easier. It makes it yours. When approval is removed from the equation, your actions simplify. You choose according to reason. You accept the outcome as external. You do not rehearse defenses. You do not preempt criticism. You do not treat misunderstanding as a personal failure. Each of these refusals conserves energy and restores clarity. This freedom is quiet. There is no signal announcing it. In fact, it often appears as restraint. You speak less. You explain less. You tolerate ambiguity without rushing to resolve it. From the outside, this may look indifferent. Internally, it is precise. Nothing external needs to change for this to begin. You do not need permission. You do not need to withdraw from others. You do not need to harden yourself. You only need to stop granting authority where none exists. The opinions of others remain what they have always been, impressions occurring in another mind. This is why Stoic freedom is maintained, not achieved. Each day presents opportunities to give authority away again. Each day, impressions will suggest that your standing is at risk. Freedom is not the absence of these suggestions. It is the repeated refusal to assent to them. Notice how this reframes strength. Strength is no longer assertiveness or dominance. It is steadiness. It is the capacity to remain aligned with your judgment when nothing external confirms it. This kind of strength does not announce itself. It does not argue. It does not persuade. It simply persists. There is also a cost. You may be misunderstood more often, at least temporarily. People accustomed to your explanations may find your restraint unsettling. They may project meanings onto your silence. This is not a problem to be solved. It is an external condition to be observed. Attempting to manage it would return you to the same dependency you are leaving. Over time, something stabilizes. Because your actions are no longer padded with justification, they become clearer. Because your words are fewer, they carry more weight. Because you are not defending yourself, there is less to defend. None of this is strategic. It is incidental. The deepest change is internal. You stop monitoring yourself through imagined eyes. You stop narrating your decisions as if they require approval. Thought becomes quieter. Attention returns to the present task. The energy once spent explaining is reclaimed for action. This is not withdrawal from responsibility. It is its full acceptance. You are responsible for your judgments, not for how they are received. You are responsible for choosing well, not for being seen as choosing well. This distinction removes a burden that was never yours to carry. Freedom remains exactly here. In the maintenance of this boundary. In the refusal to explain what does not require defense. In the willingness to let actions stand without escort. Nothing more needs to be added. The quiet end of self-justification. Nothing here requires escalation. The habit of explaining ends not with confrontation, but with clarity. You see that justification was never protecting your actions. It was protecting a judgment you quietly accepted, that your choices required external validation to be legitimate. Once this judgment is withdrawn, very little effort is needed. You do not replace explanation with silence as a rule. You replace compulsion with choice. You speak when reason calls for it. You refrain when speech would only serve discomfort. In both cases, responsibility remains intact. This is the final Stoic position. Events do not demand defense. Opinions do not grant or remove authority. Your task is not to manage perception, but to govern assent. When this task is taken seriously, the impulse to explain weakens on its own. There is nothing left to prove. Imperfection remains. You will still explain unnecessarily at times. You will still feel the pull of approval. These are not failures. They are impressions returning by habit. The work is simply to notice them without justification or blame, and to return attention to what is yours. The discipline described here does not make you superior, admired, or immune to judgment. It makes you consistent. It allows your actions to stand without escort. It removes the need to narrate your decisions as if they were on trial. This is not a dramatic ending. It is a quiet one. The end of self-justification is the beginning of steadiness. Nothing external changes. Authority settles where it belongs. Return to what is yours.